Hello, friends, and thank you for tuning in to our broadcast today. In a few moments, we're going to take you into a live session where Bishop Wayne was teaching a message designed to feed your faith and to elevate your understanding. We invite you to join in as if you were here in person and to light up the chat box with your comments and confirmations. This hour of power is your time to recharge, to renew, and even to reset your mind for a life of purpose, passion, and power. At the end of this message, we have an important announcement for you. So do stay tuned. But now let's go into the hour of power with Bishop Wayne Malcolm.
Woo! Fantastic, fantastic. All right, so tonight I start a new series entitled Miseducation Exposed. Miseducation Exposed. And so I'm going to expose a particular device of the devil that has been used against populations and against kingdom people. And I want to start the process of perhaps opening our eyes, the eyes of our understanding towards what has happened, what is happening, and what hopefully we will play a part in preventing from happening in the future. So let's pray, and we're going to dive in. Father, in the glorious name of the Lord Jesus, we are grateful for this opportunity to connect, to share, to learn, and to grow. We are asking for wisdom, revelation, understanding. Help us to see more clearly than ever before and be glorified in the presentation tonight is our prayer. In Jesus' name, amen. So I'm going to start by saying that this series is based on my best-selling book, which is called The Miseducation of the Masses, What They Didn't Teach You at School. The Miseducation of the Masses, What They Didn't Teach You at School. Now, before anyone writes in the chat box, how do I get hold of that particular book? I will tell you at the end of the session how you can get hold of a copy of this book. It is out of print, but it is possible to get an e-copy of this book. So I was inspired to do the research around this book after I read a book written by Carter G. Woodson entitled The Miseducation of the Negro. The Miseducation of the Negro. And Carter Woodson was an educator who made an observation about how emancipated slaves were educated after the proclamation of emancipation and the end of slavery, and exactly, how education worked for the Negro. And his conclusions are in the book, The Miseducation of the Negro. It is a profound read, and it's very, very eye-opening. And it would take all of the lesson for me to summarize the content of the book. But I'll tell you what it was that inspired me to do some research. One of the things that he noted was that the Negro was taught to admire all things European and to despise all things African. And so the end result of the education was for them to believe and think of themselves as inferior, and therefore that there was a set lane for them in life, and that their only hope was to stay in their lane and to stay in their space. Even so, they came out of the system feeling better than the uneducated Negro, and yet found that there was no place for them in white society, and there was increasingly no place for them in black society. And he concluded that whenever an education system teaches you to see yourself as limited or as less or as belonging to a particular lane, that system has failed you. It has failed to empower you. It has failed to inspire you. It has failed to enable you Instead, it has served to incarcerate you, and Carnegie Woodson even uses the word lynch. It is a form of lynching, because this form of education was in fact miseducation. And that led me into some research into the history and origins of compulsory state education. Compulsory state education. So I began to look at compulsory state education, where it came from, what the idea was behind it. And I'm talking about our education systems. I'm not talking about what the Spartans did in 500 BC when they forced all the children to go to military school, or what some other civilizations did in an attempt to build an army. I'm talking about the school system that became compulsory around the time of the Industrial Revolution, and I wanted to know where it came from, what was behind it, and what was the idea. And my findings were so shocking that I had to document it in a book, The Miseducation of the Masses. And I need to say that the big fans of this particular book were teachers. And so there's nothing I'm going to say today that should cast any negativity on teachers, who I think are fantastic, phenomenal, and critical components, I guess, in society. Teachers loved this book because it exposed the fact that they were often part of a box ticking culture, that they were unable to get the best out of children, either due to overcrowded classrooms, under-resourced classes, and a myriad of other problems. So I look at the system of education, and made some observations of my own. So the outline today, here's what we're going to discuss. We're going to look at some scripture, all right, because this is an international Bible study. We're going to look at some scripture. I'm then going to define miseducation. I'm going to look at the history of compulsory state education. I'll talk about the Industrial Revolution and the mass production of workers, the modern slave trade. I will talk about the modern slave trade, the great sales pitch, the 40-year plan, and the solution. Woo! If you're excited, let me know you are excited, because here we go. Here's our first scripture, Hosea 4, verse 6. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee, and that thou shalt be no priest to me. Seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God, I will also forget thy children. Now, that's a very loaded verse, often quoted in terms of the first clause, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And I guess what that means is that what they were, people have always told you what you don't know. People always told you that what you don't know won't hurt you, but quite clearly what you don't know will hurt you, according to the Bible. And according to this passage, if the enemy wants your destruction, then his best route is to blind you to particular truths, or to break your focus or misdirect you so that you cannot see a particular truth. According to Jesus, when you know the truth will make you free. Okay, simply by knowing the truth will make you free. And there are other passages that basically reveal that the enemy is the father of the lie, and that his number one strategy against believers is to lie. That was his strategy in the Garden of Eden. It was to lie. And that is his strategy today. It is to lie. And when he's lying, if you don't know the truth, then of course you'll come under the influence of that lie. But this verse is a little bit more potent, because it goes on to talk about the fact that we're not destroyed for lack of knowledge, because knowledge is not available, but we're destroyed for lack of knowledge because we've rejected knowledge. Like, knowledge isn't that important to us. And we have rejected it or misprioritized it in favor of other things. And quite clearly in this verse, that has generational implications. When a person does not know what they should know, that will have generational implications for them. And worse, if they don't know that they don't know the things that they should know, that will have serious ramifications for them. Now, I want to read this next passage. 2 Corinthians 2 verse 11, it says, lest Satan should get an advantage over us or of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. Wow. So according to this passage, if you are ignorant of Satan's devices, he will have an advantage over you. But if you are not ignorant of his devices, then you have the advantage over him. And so I'm really going to share this with you tonight because I want you to have the advantage. I want your children to have the advantage. I want our generation to have an advantage. And I want kingdom conscious people and citizens of heaven on earth to have the advantage over Satan, because we are not ignorant of his devices. So, miseducation. Okay, so I have a very simple definition for miseducation, and it is selective teaching designed to blind. Wow, selective teaching designed to blind. In other words, we're going to omit certain things from the curriculum so that you are unaware of them, you don't notice them, and hopefully you never ask about them, because we're going to select what we want you to know, what we want you to learn, because this form of education is designed to blind. So miseducation occurs when the subjects that offer a genuine opportunity to students are mysteriously missing from the curriculum. Okay? To be miseducated is much worse than being uneducated, because if you're uneducated, you don't know. If you're miseducated, you don't know that you don't know, because you think you know. However, the subjects that offer a genuine opportunity are mysteriously missing from the curriculum. So, for example, in the promo for tonight's session, I said that the universal aspiration of virtually every human being is for health, wealth, and relational happiness. That simply means that you're virtually not going to meet anyone at any time that doesn't want to be healthy, doesn't want to be wealthy, and doesn't want to be happy in a relationship. So, health, wealth, relational happiness. And yet none of these subjects are part of a national curriculum. None of these subjects are compulsory education, to the point that many of us came out of the school system and then had to teach ourselves how to be healthy, had to teach ourselves how to be wealthy, and had to teach ourselves the emotional and social intelligences necessary to sustain or maintain a happy relationship, to build a family, to have great working and professional relationships and business relationships. We had to go on and learn those subjects ourselves. Most of your adult life is going to revolve around the subject of money, for example. Most of your adult life will revolve around the subject of money. And yet money is not taught in schools. The laws of money, the language of money, the instruments of money. There's, the role of banks and financial institutions, and all of the language that we are introduced to as we move into adult life. These things are mysteriously missing from the curriculum. Any sort of commercial intelligence is mysteriously missing from the curriculum. Any sort of leadership intelligence, mysteriously missing from the curriculum, as well as the financial intelligence, social intelligence, and emotional intelligences. They're all missing from the curriculum. If you want to know about these things, then you have to pursue some sort of higher education or some sort of self-development plan in order to find out about the very things that are going to give you an advantage and an opportunity in life. And so that's miseducation. And when someone is miseducated, they are misled. And when they're misled, it means they're misdirected and they misunderstand. So that's my simple definition for miseducation. And I want to get you, I guess, tonight to despise it as much as I do. Okay? To despise it as much as I do. By just looking at the results of miseducation. What are the results? The end result for the miseducated person is, number one, blind spots. Now, I guess we all have blind spots, all right? And there are things, and it means that you don't know something that you need to know, okay? So when a person comes out of the factory school, what I'm going to call the factory school, and that's not my word. I'm going to test. This is a word that was used to describe the origins of compulsory state education, the factory school. When a person comes out of the factory school, they come out with blinkers on their eyes, and they don't know that they don't know something that they need to know. So when you're telling them that they need to know it, they're either laughing at you, they're ignoring you, and they then reject knowledge. And they reject knowledge because they don't know that they don't know something that they need to know. We go over to the top right, limited opportunities. And what that means is that if a person is miseducated, their opportunities in life are limited because the subjects and the skills that would give them a genuine opportunity are missing, mysteriously omitted from the curriculum. So they come out of the system totally job dependent. And this is a phrase that I'm going to use quite a bit in this series, job dependent. In other words, they come out of the system looking for a job. And as far as they're concerned, if they cannot find a job, then they're going to look to the state, okay? And so they become job dependent or state dependent. And this is because they were miseducated to believe that their only opportunity and their only future lay in making themselves attractive enough to a particular employer. Right, down to the bottom left, injustice. So ignorance of basic human and civil rights. Isn't it amazing how so much of our lives revolve around or are impacted by political decisions, okay, and political systems at a national or local level. And yet you can come through the entire school system having absolutely no knowledge of your human and civil rights, having absolutely no knowledge of the process by which a law comes into being, having absolutely no knowledge of how, when, or where to protest, and having no knowledge of procedure. So you come out of the system a victim of injustice and feel like the only way you can fight is with your hands and your feet. Now go over to the fourth, skills deficiency. Unable to compete in a competitive world. So the world is changing at lightning speed thanks to several factors, including technology, globalization, and perhaps a fourth industrial revolution that is seeing machines, robots, and artificial intelligence literally becoming part of our very way of life. And so people are going through a system, coming out of it unable to compete in a highly competitive world. And these are the results of miseducation. Blind spots. Don't know that you don't know something you really need to know. Your opportunities are limited. You become a victim of injustice and unable to compete in a highly competitive world. Woo! So far, so good. Are we doing all right? Okay, cool. So I want to talk a bit about the history of compulsory state education. Now, I'm going to refer to this gentleman as Frederick the Great of Prussia, King Frederick of Prussia, Wilhelm Frederick actually of Prussia. Prussia in the 1700s was what we now call Germany. Okay, so it was Germany. It was called Prussia. And Frederick the Great suffered huge losses in the Napoleonic Wars, in wars with Napoleon. And his military was decimated, okay? He didn't have enough fighting men. And so he came up with this idea that if we make it compulsory that every male child goes to a state-run school, then what we can do is we can teach them obedience to the crown. We can teach them loyalty. We can teach them military skills. And we can teach them some basic skills like reading and writing so that we'll have an intelligent society that is absolutely loyal to the king. And this way, he's going to replenish his decimated military. So he put this system into operation and made it compulsory that every male child had to attend a state-run school. Okay. Now, that model is the very model. His model is the very model that was used to create basically it's the template upon which all Western, that's European and American compulsory state education is based. In fact, the founders of the American system actually spent time in Germany studying this very system before the first state, Massachusetts, was the first state to make the education compulsory. But the founders of that particular system literally went to study the Prussian system in Germany for the template. So this was the template. And I just want you to notice, without giving too much of a history lesson, that the reason Frederick the Great did this was because for him, he didn't have a military. He didn't have a strong military. And what he wanted to do was make sure that the rising generation were totally obedient and totally loyal and totally competent to recruit them as soldiers in his army. And so for him, this was an instrument of social control. This was a way of controlling the population whilst making it seem as though he was adding value. Okay? So we jump over to the next column, the Industrial Revolution. Now, why is the Industrial Revolution important? It's important because since creation, societies worldwide have been agricultural. They were fundamentally agricultural. And so the wealthy were landowners. The kings and the nobility were landowners, and they used peasants and serfs and slaves to work their farmlands. Okay, they used peasants, serfs, and slaves to work their farmlands. And they owned the land, and they worked the land through cheap labor. I'm going to call it cheap labor. But then we have the transatlantic slave trade, in which we see forced labor, okay? So these are people who are taken against their will from their homeland, brought across the Atlantic, and they're brought across the Atlantic for one reason, and it's to work land. It's to work land for land owners, okay? So of course, the slave trade ended, and I know that some people believe that the reason the slave trade ended was because of the activities of Puritans and the public outrage and the general, lobbying of parliaments to bring an end to this trade. And whereas, of course, this did play a part, okay, this did play a part, as the Civil War did play a part, and other things played a part. Fundamentally, okay, according to the Bible, now we're all going to get deep now. According to the Bible, systemic evil always has economic roots. Systemic evil always has economic roots. And that is what is truly meant by the passage, the verse that says, for the love of money is the root of all evil. Okay? It's not all personal evil, it's systemic evil, societal evil. Okay? At the root of all social, systemic, societal evil, structural evil, is a set of economic factors. And so the slave trade was an economic phenomenon before it was a racial phenomenon. And many of these traders first tried to use Irish indentured workers. They tried to use indentured workers from various places. And then the whole idea of literally just taking the slaves, taking people from Africa and forcing them into slavery. So I said that to say this, that when the Industrial Revolution happened, and this meant, the first Industrial Revolution meant the advent of steel and railroads and factories for mass production, okay? And the economy, or the nature of the global economy, underwent a revolution in that we were shifting from an agricultural society to an industrial society. So the power and the wealth was with the owners of factories and the builders of railroads and people who could manage steel and people who could build weapons for war in their factories. That's where the power shifted to. So it shifted from the farm to the factory. Okay? Power moved from the farm to the factory. And when power moved from the farm to the factory, what you need now is a new kind of slave, because the old slaves can't work the factory. The old slaves won't work. So this is what partly led to this dismantling of the slave trade as we knew it, because the slave trade was based on an agricultural economy which would not work in an industrialized economy. So what you're seeing here is that with the advent, with the shift of power from the farm to the factory, what the rulers and masters and owners of the systems needed was a new kind of slave. I'm going to say it again, a new kind of slave. I'm going to say it again, a new kind of slave. They couldn't rely on the kind of slavery they had before, and what they needed was a new kind of slave. You know what kind of slave that was that they were going to need? Are y'all ready for it now? They needed voluntary slaves. Woo! Help me now. Somebody, that's an air horn moment. Because you could work the land on forced labor, but now with these factories, you now need voluntary slaves. You need people to volunteer. You need people to say, I'd like to do that. I'd like to sit there for 8 hours a day doing the exact same thing over and over again monotonously, and passing along the conveyor belt so the next person can do the same thing monotonously. And I'll be loyal, and I'll be obedient, and I'll be reliable, and I'll be on time. And I'm going to do this because what you're going to do now is you're going to pay me at the end of the week. And what you're going to pay me is just enough to keep me coming back. I wish I had some help in here. So the Industrial Revolution saw the advent of a new kind of a slave. And so what they needed now was another factory. Another factory. Now, guess what? Frederick the Great's education system was called by the end of the 1800s. It was called the factory school. Woo! Help me now. The factory school. That was their words. Because the school was a factory for the mass production of volunteer slaves. It was a factory for the mass production of workers, of a workforce who would leave the school and go straight to the factory and work the factory. And you either work the factory in terms of the machinery or as a foreman. Perhaps you would become a manager if you was really good. But fundamentally, this is the factory that you put raw materials into, which is your children. You put the children into the factory, and the factory is gonna convert them into volunteers. And they're gonna come out of the factory looking for an opportunity to work in another factory. Woo! My word. I'm getting all excited up in here. So, actually, the school at the time mirrored the factory floor. From the bell that was rang to say beginning of class, end of class, that was the same bell that was used in the factory to say beginning of shift, end of shift. And then what you found in the school system was that people were rewarded fundamentally for their obedience, okay, for their obedience. So they were good student if they were obedient. They were a bad student if they were disobedient. Their intelligence was judged by one type of intelligence only, which is called academic intelligence. And all the other intelligences were totally irrelevant. It was purely academic, and you were rewarded for obedience. Now, some scholars, some people who have looked at the system say actually that it was a form of brainwashing, just like Roberts just put in here, mass programming, okay? And the reason they say it's brainwashing is this. Look, there is no business or work opportunity in the real world that will require you to concentrate for 30 minutes, 40 minutes on English, then forget it, and concentrate for 30, 40 minutes on maths, then forget it, then concentrate for 30, 40 minutes on science, then forget it, then concentrate for 30, 40 minutes on geography, then forget it, then concentrate for 30, 40 minutes on history. If that keeps happening every day, then what's happening is you're being desensitized. And you're being desensitized to knowledge at all, which is why virtually nothing you learned in the school system is part of your working life today. Virtually nothing. Like you could go back in your mind and think, oh yeah, I remember some geography. I remember some history. I remember some maths. I remember some English. But it never was a contributing factor to whatever you did with the rest of your life. And so what people have concluded is that the system is broken. The system is broken. And when we say the system is broken, okay, it is not just the methods that are broken, it's the mission itself. Because the mission is still the production of workers for jobs that don't or won't exist. I'm going to say again, the mission is still the production. It's still a factory system that mass produces workers for jobs that don't or won't exist. It's not about living. It is about working. It is broken at a systemic and missional level, not just at an operational level. And if all you do is look at how it operates and try to fix how it operates, you're missing the point. It's actually broken at the missional level, where the objective, the point and the prize is the mass production of workers for jobs that don't or won't even exist. Now, I want to talk about economic slavery, because in my book, I do draw some parallels between the slave trade and the factory school. And I might as well throw this in right now and make it quite clear that when slaves boarded ships in West Africa headed for America or the West Indies, when they arrived, they didn't automatically go to an auction block. They first went to a breaking house. And the breaking house's purpose was to teach them some basic commands and to teach them complete obedience to a master, and to show them that they have no hope of ever being free, and their only hope of even staying alive is total obedience to a master. So they were broken there. They broke you there. And once they broke you, then they could take you to an auction block, and you would stand at the auction block and to be inspected like cattle by a slave owner, who would then pick you and could immediately begin to use you because you'd already learned some basic commands in a new language. And so the breaking house was necessary before someone could be put on the auction block. And when I looked at the origin of our school system, I realized it was functioning like a breaking house, and it was breaking the spirit. It was breaking the imagination. It was breaking the very thing that could make you an entrepreneur, a leader, an innovator. It was breaking that out of you, and it was breaking you into obedience to say, look, your only future is to find a job and hold it down. And these low expectations were being put on some people. Now, I know there are some private schools that operate very differently, but I'm talking about compulsory state education, in which such low expectations were just drilled into the minds of these children who were raw materials in the factory school, and they came out of it all ready to stand on the auction block, hoping that someone would pick them for this new slavery. Now, I'm going to talk about economic slavery. The slave trade was an economic phenomenon in which forced labor was imported from Africa. The age of mass production required a different type of slave. These were mass produced in schools. Woo! So, is this making sense so far? Is this a blessing to anyone? I know it's a tough intro, but it's stuff. If we're ignorant of the devil's device, he will always have an advantage over us. So watch this. The point and the prize in school is a good job at all times. I mean, you're told, look, if you don't do well, you're not going to get a good job. The point and the prize was always a good job. Self-employment, enterprise, and financial literacy were not taught. So there was never a sense of, okay, well, if you can't get a job, you can create a job by being self-employed or being entrepreneurial with some financial literacy, because financial literacy was not taught, self-employment was not taught, enterprise was not taught, because enterprise is for them, the bosses, the masters, not for you, the masses. You, the masses, can only ever hope to get a job working for one of these masters. Don't start entertaining ideas that you're going to be a master. And so the point and the prize was, number one, a good job. Okay? And so you were rewarded for obedience, not intelligence. The system classifies you as clever or stupid based on one form of intelligence. Just one form of intelligence. And there are multiple intelligences. We now know that people have multiple intelligences, including creative intelligences, musical intelligences, artistic intelligences, architectural intelligences. There are so many types of intelligence people have, and yet the system fundamentally classified people who were phenomenally intelligent, classified them as stupid because they failed with one particular form of intelligence. And it wasn't that they failed to understand or to comprehend. The clash is often the difference. The clash was the teaching style and the learning environment and the home environment and all of these things that allowed then this system to classify people as fit or unfit for a big opportunity. And then finally, you got dependence. So you come out of it dependent on a job. No job, then you look to the state. And this was the state of play. Now, I'm going to dive into this. We don't have that much longer left to go. But get ready, get ready, get ready. My word, I need an air horn in here. Because basically for the whole time, and by the way, I did say I'd mention this, King Frederick the Great, he gave them 8 years. He said they would stay in our compulsory system for 8 years. And once a year, there would be a summer holiday. Okay, this is what he did in the 1700s. There'd be a summer holiday, and the summer holiday was so that the parents could work the farms, at harvest time. Okay, so here we go. So in the system, right? In the system, you are sold a 40-year plan. A 40-year plan. This is what we are sold in the system, a 40-year plan. And here's how the 40-year plan works. You must give 40 hours a week to an employer for 40 years of your life. Pay up to 40% in taxes, and the state will take care of you when you retire. That's the plan that the masses were sold through the factory school. And this becomes the aspiration of people coming out of the factory school. Now today, thankfully, there's a lot of difference today. And the difference is that we have media, free media, social media, and other media that is creating aspiration in young people who are saying, no, the 40-year plan I reject. But the 40-40-40 plan, or what I call the 40-year plan, involves 40 hours a week for 40 years of your life in exchange for just enough to pay your bills. And then you pay up to 40% in tax and trust that the state will take care of you when you retire. That's where most people in Britain are, okay? And wherever there is any kind of a welfare state, this system gets sold to people. And what you have to decide is whether you buy into this or not. Because believe it or not, there are people who did not do well in the factory school who are making millions a year, who are working less than 40 hours a week, who are working for themselves, or who are enabling other people through their enterprise and initiatives. And so there are ways out and beyond, and it's very important that believers think outside of this box and beyond this box. So, and why we got to think out of it? Because it's outdated. It is outdated. Now, here goes. Number one, the old jobs don't exist. They are not coming back. as manufacturing has largely moved offshore to developing countries. All right. So, you know, people that were sold the 40-year plan in the factory school are coming out very disillusioned because the jobs that they thought they could get don't exist. They don't exist because of something that's called globalization. They don't exist because it is cheaper to manufacture in various other places. It's cheaper to outsource. And so even though countries try to keep a balance, fundamentally, those jobs are not coming back. And if you want to see the most derelict pieces of real estate in any city, it's the old factories. They're old factories. They're derelict. They're being knocked down. They're becoming housing. Why are they becoming housing? Why are they being knocked down? Because those jobs are not coming back. Number two, another revolution is taking place. It's the digital revolution. It includes artificial intelligence and the gig economy. They are now facts of modern life. The nature of the economy and of economics has changed fundamentally, is changing fundamentally all the time. And yes, there are some roles that we're always going to need, but there are many roles that are increasingly going to become obsolete because another revolution is taking place. The first industrial revolution made certain things obsolete. The second and the third made certain things obsolete. We're now in a fourth, and some would say a fifth industrial revolution that is going to mean that job-dependent people are quickly going to become state-dependent people because they don't have a skill set or a mindset or a tool set that says, I can create my own income. I can create multiple streams of income. I can support myself even if I can't find a job. It's understanding that a revolution is taking place, that opportunities are always created in an industrial revolution or in an economic shift. In every economic transition, whether it's from agriculture to industry, there are always going to be big winners and there are always going to be big losers. The big losers in the current revolution will be job-dependent people. People who have no side hustle. They don't know how to start a side hustle. They don't know how to run a side hustle. They don't have any commercial intelligence. They don't have any financial intelligence. They don't have any leadership intelligence. And they don't have social intelligences, knowing how to win friends and influence people, because you don't need it in the job environment. But people that are totally dependent on the job market are going to be the big losers in the next revolution. We are in a new economic age, and new opportunities exist for people who practice strategic self-development. That's people who don't reject knowledge, but embrace it and say, you know what? Things are changing. Times are changing. Let me learn a new skill. Let me do a little course on computing and learn something about computers or about software or about the internet, or let me learn something else. People who are adverse to learning something else have misunderstood the very purpose of education. Education, by the way, is a good word. And it's a great concept. I believe it's the new emancipation. It's beautiful. Okay? Miseducation, though, is all about taking you through a factory school with one objective in mind, and that is to make you a voluntary economic slave. Well, we are not volunteering for economic slavery. We are not volunteering for wage slavery. We understand that we are called to be kings and priests in the earth, that poverty was never part of God's plan, that prosperity and abundance and increase is the plan, and that it's not going to happen if all we know how to do is the old thing. We're going to have to wake up and say, it's time for me to learn some new things so I can at least ride the wave or get ahead of the curve. Strategic self-directed learning means identifying the subjects that support your vision. Your vision. What is your vision of the future? I'm just meeting a lot of believers that have a big vision for the future, but have no route or vehicle. Like, this is where I'm going with my life, but they have no route, they don't know how to get there, and they have no vehicle. Well, the fact of the matter is that you have to become intentional and strategic and say, okay, look, if I'm going to live out my dream, there's a couple of intelligences I need to develop. There's a couple things I need to know. In the factory school, I didn't even know that I didn't know the things that I needed to know. But now I know that I need to know these things. So I'm going to start building a library of information around those subjects. I'm going to spend less time surfing social media and watching soaps. And I'm going to start to get into the habit of learning something new on a weekly or a daily basis. I'm going to get into the habit of reading. I'm going to get into the habit of watching things that empower me based on my vision, and committing quality time to learning new skills. Economic survival. Social, personal, financial, political, technological, and commercial skills are now critical to your economic survival in the new world. Wow. And yeah, I said it. Social skills are critical to your survival. Personal skills. When I say personal, I'm talking about how you handle and manage your emotional intelligence, your mood, your mindset, your temper, your distortions, all of that. You're going to have to manage that in the new world because no one has to put up with you. No one has to work with you. And there are now so many people competing for the same job that you're going to have to become socially and personally skillful, even if you just want to keep a job. Financial skills are not an option anymore. They are absolutely critical. Financial IQ, financial intelligence, financial vocabulary, financial language, understanding financial instruments, financial opportunities. You're going to have to educate yourself on this because the factory school didn't want you to know this, because that wasn't the point. That wasn't the mission. The mission was never your emancipation. It was never your liberation. It was your incarceration to the next factory. And you're going to need to have some political intelligence as well, because you're going to be called upon to protest, to argue, you're going to be called upon to be involved in some way, because political decisions have material impacts on your life, lifestyle, livelihood, legacy, your business. It all has an impact. You need to have some understanding so you know who to talk to, when to talk to, how to talk to. Technological, you can't get away with it now. Okay, if you're up in years, fine. But if you can run around the park, if you can walk to the mall, you need some technological intelligence, and you need to start understanding some software, some apps, the world of the internet, computers, email. All of it. You're going to need to understand it, because you will be left behind, because the new revolution, like people were trained in the school system for a world that disappeared before their eyes. And that world has disappeared. And guess what? In every field, knowledge is doubling every 2 to 3 years. That means in the field of medicine, in the next 2 to 3 years, we will know as much new things about medicine as we do today. Technology, it's all doubling. One discovery can absolutely add volumes and volumes of new information to the world. So if you're not constantly learning, then you are being left behind. Commercial skills. Commercial skills is just how do you package something and sell it? How do you package your skills and sell it? How do you package your knowledge and sell it? How do you package your services and sell it? There's something you know how to do that someone else will pay you to do for them, if you have some commercial skills. But we came out of the system without commercial skills because we didn't need commercial skills because we weren't going to be commercial. We were going to be slaves volunteering to work in the new factory. And we were conditioned for it through the old factory. Woo! Education. Real education. And when I say education, I'm not now talking about the miseducation of factory schools. Because I tell you something. I'll tell you the true purpose of the school. This is what the school should have done. The school should have taught you how to learn. And the school should have taught you how to think. Instead, it taught you what to think. I'm going to say it again. The school should have taught you how to think, but instead it taught you what to think. And what you should have learned is how to think and how to ask questions and find answers. Because innovation and creativity is the process of asking questions and finding answers. And so what should have happened is you should have left school. When you left school, you should have gone into the full-time business of lifelong learning, because your brain is equipped to keep learning till the day you die. So you should have gone into the business of learning for life. You learned how to get a qualification. Now learn to live. You learned how to get a job. Now learn how to live. Now decide that actually I'm going back to school, not to their school, but I'm going to create a school in my house. I'm going to create a school in my heart. I'm going to create a school in my life. Why? Education is the new emancipation. Democracy without political literacy is a fantasy. Isn't it amazing? We got this big democracies, right? And we've got to go out here and vote. Every 4 years, we're going to go out here and vote. And then we got local votes. And we're going to go out and we're going to do all this voting. But without political literacy, that's all a fantasy. Because all you're going to do is vote for what the system tells you is popular, without even the means to investigate what does this tenor mean. Banks without financial intelligence, that's a fantasy, okay? You're banking, but you don't understand how banks work, what they do with your money, how to compare one against the other, the opportunities and instruments that they make available to you and facilities they make available to you. You don't know how to figure out if this is what you really want. Why? Because the financial intelligence, you have to go and get that yourself, because the factory school wouldn't give that to you. The internet without technical know-how, a fantasy. Creativity without commercial savvy, that's the one that really, really gets me. I keep meeting creative people all the time. I'm meeting creators who can take a photograph that come right out of a movie. You can paint and draw stuff that look like it was a photograph. You can write songs and poems and films, short films and plays. And you're a producer and you've got all this creative energy, but you have no commercial skills, no commercial intelligence. Therefore, you're doing it in your spare time because you've got to go to your job to keep the roof over your head. Whereas there are other people who have brought commercial intelligence to their creativity. They're licensing their work. They've protected their intellectual property. They know the market to sell it in. They're selling their work. They're licensing their work, and they're making a living from their work because they had commercial sophistication with their creative innovations. And that's one of the saddest ones for me, is that because I meet so many creative people who are absolutely broke and have no way of monetizing their creativity. What's the reason? The factory school would never tell you how to do that. You have to go and learn that yourself. Opportunity with discipline, without discipline, it should say, is a fantasy. Positions of authority without social skills are all fantasies.
Let me ask you a question. What is it costing you to not understand the mysteries of the kingdom? What part of your life is being destroyed for lack of knowledge? Is it your peace, your progress, your prosperity, or your posterity? How much time have you lost? How many false starts? How many prayers unanswered? Not because God didn't hear you, but because you didn't yet understand the system He designed to release you. The truth is, most believers are not stuck because of sin or lack of faith. They're stuck because they've never been trained in kingdom principles, kingdom philosophy, and kingdom systems. That's why I created the Kingdom MBA 40-Day Challenge. Of course, you could do the full Kingdom MBA in a year, but thanks to this program, you can experience the transformation in just 40 days. Why 40 days? Jesus fasted 40 days to launch His ministry. After His resurrection, He taught the secrets of the kingdom to His disciples for 40 days before Pentecost. Now it's your turn. Each day of this challenge, you get to inhale revelation in the morning, and then to exhale the transformation in the evening. For 40 straight days, your mind will be renewed, your spirit recharged, and your purpose clarified. You'll learn the principles of kingdom philosophy, psychology, economics, business, and citizenship. This is a 40-day immersive transformation designed to give you clarity and confidence fast. Every day you'll breathe in kingdom concepts through high-impact tutorials, and then you'll breathe it out through reflection, application, and strategic action. 7 lessons a week, 7 weeks of accelerated transformation. You'll go through 40 kingdom-rich sessions covering everything from purpose to positioning, wealth to wisdom, business models to ministry mandates. You'll learn how the kingdom actually works and how to build your life, your message, and your movement on it. And the best part, you're not doing this alone. You'll be part of a purpose-driven ecosystem and community of leaders, coaches, and entrepreneurs who are being trained just like you to bring the kingdom into every sphere of culture. So if you know you're called, if you're tired of confusion, delay, and spiritual stagnation, if you're done trying to fit your calling into broken systems that were never designed for you, then this is your moment, this is your window, this is your 40-day challenge. Click the link to find out more. Hey, I'm Bishop Wayne Malcolm, author, coach, and founder of the Epic Kingdom Network. If you've ever felt like something's missing in what you've been taught about Christianity, you're not wrong. Most of us were taught that heaven and the hereafter are the goal, prize, and sole objective of the faith. But the original message of Christ taught us to engage, to influence, and to transform the world. Believe it or not, Jesus didn't die to get us into heaven. He died to get heaven into us, and then through us into the earth. What if I told you that Christianity was never meant to be a religion, but rather a relationship and a global revolution? A divine intervention, not a man-made institution. The original message and mission of Christ was hijacked, diluted, distorted, and replaced with a religion. My new ebook, Kingdom Theology for Kingdom Citizens, is not just another devotional, it's a call to action. A bold reintroduction to the original message of Christ, a message of dominion, not escapism, of transformation, not tradition. You'll learn what it means to rule and reign with Christ, to steward wealth with purpose, to influence government, education, culture, and business as an ambassador of heaven, This book will shift your lens, stir your spirit, and set you on course with divine clarity. And right now, for a limited time, I'm giving you free access to the digital and audiobook versions. No cost, no catch. Just click the link in the description, grab your copy, and step into clarity.
Hey there, entrepreneurs! If you enjoy the teachings of Bishop Wayne Malcolm, I've got something amazing for you. Introducing the New Breed Community, an exclusive online platform for kingdom-conscious entrepreneurs, professionals, investors, and creators. This isn't just a community, it's a movement where we discuss and explore kingdom concepts. Here, kingdom-minded people connect, share, learn, and grow together. Inside, you'll find exclusive content from Bishop Wayne Malcolm, including special sessions just for members. And the best part? It's free to join. The New Breed Community sits on the Heartbeat platform, where Bishop Wayne Malcolm is excited to meet you online. Join us for weekly Q&A sessions with Bishop Wayne, and get exclusive insights that can transform your life. Love to read? Join our book club to feed your mind and spirit. Got a prayer request? Post it and let's lift each other up. Have a testimony? Share how God's goodness is shining in your life. We're more than just a community, we're a movement. Discover the powerful relationship between your profession and your purpose. Join us now on the Heartbeat platform. Connect with us and let's grow together. Bishop Wayne Malcolm and the New Breed Community are waiting for you. So what are you waiting for? Hit that join button and step into a world of connection and growth. A warm welcome awaits you. See you on the inside.